Hello and welcome to the Lenko Show. This is episode number 13 now. And today I'm joined again by my brother Chris, my co-host, partner in crime. And I'm not feeling very well today, so I'm going to try and take a bit of a back seat and let Chris do all the leg work and all the donkey work on this. So are you all right with that, Chris?
It is, for the benefit of everyone involved, it's a terrible idea.
I disagree. I think it's going to benefit me greatly. And
it's a risk. Let's put it as a risk.
Right, okay. What I would like to say as well is I'm not expecting any sympathy. I'm completely out of Lemsips and lozenges, and I'm just bunged up with a bloody cold. So I'll be fine. I'll make it through. And Chris, hopefully, what are you saying?
I said it's not like you've not stopped talking about it.
And well, hopefully you can steer the ship in the right direction. Today, we are going to be talking about the Yorkshire Hero.
Yorkshire Hero.
Hero, aye. It's Yorkshire Hero because it's missing the H off the front. So, Hero, ERO, event plus response equals outcome. That's going to be our key learning point for today. And our crucial pearls of wisdom will hopefully come through and reflect the importance of this little rule. So, I don't think this is going to be a particularly long episode. What would you say?
Well, ideally, no. It sounds like you could drop dead any minute now.
Anyway, so take it away, Chris. Get us cracking.
Yeah, so I think it's worthwhile explaining the hero, given a light of recent circumstances. Obviously, Alex has obviously explained his circumstances. He left Total Fitness. I'm still working in Total Fitness. Well, I was until they closed the gyms again. However, my point to waffling on there is, with the hero equation, there are certain things that you can't necessarily control. Now, we preach quite greatly that you should always be looking to take responsibility, but that doesn't necessarily mean taking control over everything. And I think a good way of kind of simplifying things and going through things with, especially working with clients, like doing the online stuff over the last couple of weeks and so, is to simplify it using the hero equation. So event plus response equals outcome. So a lot of people have been very, very worried about recent events, which is understandable. And a lot of people
recent events being the third national lockdown, closing of businesses.
That's the one. That's the one.
Of gyms, golf courses, restaurants, pubs, bars, schools, to an extent.
Yeah, all right. You don't have to rub it in. All right. But yeah, the collective circumstances that if you are not Boris Johnson or someone highly
influential,
I was going to try and find, I was thinking of something I was going to say, and I thought, is there a way I can say this without getting myself into a political battle? We'll leave that. We'll move on from that. But yes, let's go with influential. My point is, you don't have much scope to influence what's actually going on in those situations. So you don't have control over your event per se. Which means people are asking, how do I take responsibility for that? Well, the idea is, and this is a great Jocko quote, you're not looking to control the universe. You're not looking to control what goes on in the United Kingdom or wherever you're listening from. You are looking to control your world, specifically your world, and reclaim your power over what's going on in your life. So if we look at the equation, you don't have control over the events, but you do have control over your responses to the events. Now, E plus R equals O. You can still change your outcomes if you change your responses. And if you can't change the event, just look at changing responses. So, for example, Alex, what would you say your response has been to being put into another lockdown?
Do you want my honest answer?
Yeah, 100%. That's why I asked you specifically.
My initial response was one of understanding. I could see it was going to happen. I'm not going to say whether I agree nor disagree because I don't have the information at hand as to whether or not to be able to form an opinion on such a thing. I don't have the information required. I don't have the experiences required. I'm not involved in the running of the NHS. I don't know how busy or empty hospitals are. I don't know too much more about the prevalence of the viruses than what we get through the media, which again is going to be limited. So acceptance was a very early kind of thought and response to what happened on Monday night.
Okay, lovely.
Other people, and in my not so early, well, in my earlier years where maybe I didn't have this level of wisdom, maybe I would have experienced other emotions such as anger, denial, depression, and they're obviously not very empowering. They're going to be quite detrimental. They're going to lead you to doing a lot of other things that are either going to drag you down or they're going to drag other people down, and they're going to take your attention elsewhere. And ultimately, if your attention, your feelings, your emotions are, well, whichever way they are directed and diverted is going to determine the quality of your outcome, which is obviously key to what we're going through today, isn't it?
Yeah, I think those emotions that you're saying about there, those particular responses, where we were kind of saying, if you were, I guess, if you will, I think the words you used were less wise, and younger. I think that's actually where a lot of the population are at. They are taking it negatively. They've not really accepted it. They're in denial. They're upset about it. They're angry about it, and it's pushing them toward a depression. I know a lot of people obviously struggling with mental issues at the moment. I think that's where most people really are at. So it just goes to show that even just in that, I mean, that's quite an exaggerated scenario, I guess, but even that goes to show that the outcomes are completely different. So what I was going to ask is, what would you say that your outcome is as a result of that response?
I would say my outcome's been quite positive. And I've got a few notes here as to how I've thought about this and how I've got myself there. But what I'd like to do is just backtrack just a little bit and say, you know, with my current knowledge, my current understanding of myself and things like this, and going through the psychology of it and understanding the way that we think as people, it is perfectly understandable how anybody is in a situation where they are thinking negatively about this. So if you are thinking negatively about this and you're listening to this thinking, you know, these two dickheads, it's all right for them, they're sat working from home and doing this, that, the other, you know, everyone's circumstances in this situation are different, but everyone's experiences building into this are even more, even more widely arranged. I don't know whether that be the right word, widely arranged, or, you know, there's such a vast kind of wealth of expertise and lessons learned from your own history that are going to put you in your current situation. For example, you know, if you're running a pub and you're at risk of your business going under, your business is being shut by the government, you've got things that you can do that are under your control that mean that you've got the possibility of putting food on the table for your family. You're going to keep on doing them. And then what happens? What's your response then if the government then takes that away or something else gets blocked? You've got that same frustration, that same battle to keep on fighting through it. And I know there are a few gyms out there that have, been relatively well publicized, or I've seen them publicized on social media channels, that they're remaining open. They're deciding to kind of go against the grain, using their own judgment and their own beliefs and their own expertise to direct and guide their actions. And whether you like it or not, they are you have to kind of try and understand their motives or reasons for doing it. And I don't think people like that are trying to run their business, they're trying to help their family, they're trying to put food on the table, they're trying to take care of their community by opening their gym and staying busy and staying open. And again, all within previous guidelines of sanitizing equipment, social distancing and things like that. That's them using their judgment, and the intentions behind it are not to kind of worsen the pandemic or put people's lives at risk. So with anything, before you get upset with someone, try and understand their circumstances and their situation. Does that make sense? I know I've rambled on a lot there and I've not even answered your question.
Yeah, no, but you know what? Like, I like that because I actually read. So we went into the first lockdown and lots of people were like, you know, when you get some people who try and like mitigate like the circumstances, are kind of like, oh yeah, we're all in the same boat, like we're all going through the same thing, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, well, at first it's good that we've got some people out there doing that. But then I heard something even better. So obviously people were referencing it as we're all in the same boat. But then I heard someone describe it quite eloquently, actually. They actually said, I mean, there was a bit of a ramble beforehand and there was a bit of like finger pointing and blaming stuff. But then it turned into, we're not all in the same boat, we're all in the same storm. And people are in different boats. And that's kind of like what you were describing there. Like some people might be working from home right now. Some people might be, I mean, we don't have any kids. Last time I checked, you didn't have any kids. I don't have any kids. Like, we don't have to worry about that. Obviously, with the situation that's going on with schools and stuff like that, it's going to be much harder for people who are obviously parents having to look after their children now as well, and having to work, whether they're obviously all a lot happier. Like, it's all just different parts of the same storm, we're all in different boats. But to add to that, I think this ties in perfectly with how the equation works. E plus R equals O. Everything that you are currently experiencing is an outcome. Your current experience is an outcome, and your outcomes, obviously, as the equation says, are the result of how you've responded to all the previous events in your life. So if you are dissatisfied with the outcomes that you've got right now, if you're not happy, then you need to change either the events that take place in your life or your responses to those events. And I think, I can't remember if you spoke about this on one of the other podcasts. Obviously, we talk a lot about like the brain and how people work and things like that. We know that how you do one thing is how you do everything. These same outcomes will repeat based on these same events that come and crop up. And by the same event, I don't mean like going into lockdown, like, and then another lockdown will cause the same outcome. It more than likely will, but there'll be small things that can happen daily that kind of resemble what a lockdown is. So a lack of control or whatever that will result in the same responses from you and the same outcomes. Like, it will happen every day. This is where we've got to get honest with ourselves and look at what our responses really are. What are the events that keep taking place? What are the responses? And we can start tracking them and finding out, okay, this is the kind of response I have to these sorts of events. This I need to change in order to get different outcomes. I think one of the things that I know I preach by this book and I always go back to it. Success Principles by Jack Canfield. He always talks about this, and he talks about the Eero equation as well. And he talks about, like, whilst it's very, very simple, and I think this is probably what gets people, because it's so simple, it's obviously not easy. And one of the big things that you have to do is you have to be willing to pay attention to what you are really doing in your life and what's really going on and what you're really paying attention to. I know a lot of people have like, I don't know if you've experienced this, but obviously working in the gym coming out of the second lockdown, a lot of people were talking about like cleansing their social media profiles and things like that. Have you ever heard people doing that? Because they found
lots of that
distracted by the things that they're looking at, which just bear no relevance to them whatsoever. I've got a funny story. I was watching, I don't know how I stumbled across this, but it was, I'd been listening to podcasts, but it was on YouTube, and it was while I was doing like my jobs like washing up and washing clothes and ironing and stuff like that in the morning. I'd have a podcast on, and I somehow crept across this podcast where this guy was interviewing rappers, which absolutely fine, don't have a problem with that. But all of a sudden, I realized that I was listening to, I think I must have been, because I remember having this thought, like 33 minutes into a podcast where this guy was basically just slagging the person off that he was interviewing. And they were talking about like drugs and all kinds of shit that I just don't really care about. And I thought, wow, I've just literally had the last 33 minutes of my life. I've just had all that shit going into my subconscious, which it isn't a lot, granted, but it's enough, and it is enough to make me think, what on earth am I paying attention to this for? I think a lot of other people, like, who have a lot going on and won't really necessarily have the capacity to be able to pay attention to the small things like that I was paying attention to then, like, they'll have stuff like that going in all the time, and they won't even realize it, and it will greatly affect the results and the other things that go on in your life, etc. But I think my point to that was that was just one kind of example of reflection, like self-reflection. You have to be willing to look at what's really going on, look at what your personal responses are if you can't control certain events, and just be honest with yourself. I think how Jack Canfield described it was like, I think he talks about like success. Obviously, he's talking about your results, your actual specific results in certain areas. So I think he said, make it very, very simple. It's either you are or you're not. So it's like, if you're looking at where you're at in life, are you rich or are you not rich? Do you command respect, I think was one, or do you not? Do you have the ideal body that you want, or do you not? Are you happy or are you not? Do you have what you want or do you not have what you want? Like, it's as simple as that. And if the answer is a no, then you need to change things.
Yeah, I think a really good way to summarize that is that, very simply, the way you show up in the world, whether it's your physical self, like the way you look in terms of body type, shape, composition, and the things you say and the way you interact with other people is simply down to a result of what goes in, whether it's the foods you eat, the content you consume. Like, if you're listening to rappers chatting shit about doing drugs, that's a very, very different pathway to possibly some either educational or motivational content. So, you're going to have a different outcome or a different end result based on the kind of information you consume. And that's the way that we all learn. That's the way we get, put together as humans. It's the way that we grow and we develop. Like, you can't exude something or put something out there that you haven't already heard or taken in one form or another. It doesn't just come from emptiness. There has to be something or a trigger to spark that reaction in the first place. And going back to what you were saying about outcomes and it's our responses to them. It's I've got a good little quote here from JFK, which is, things do not happen, things are made to happen. There is something that has caused the event and the outcome in the first place. Plain and simple. We're in a lockdown because there's a virus that we struggle to control. We can't look after the population. This is the best response our government can think of to deal with it, to get a vaccine into everyone. And that's where we are. And that's the reality of the situation. And then, you know, I think about this in a sporting context where, you know, if you're playing football and one of your players puts in a bad tackle and the referee gives a penalty and sends your player off, that's your event. Like, the event is the bad tackle, the red card. Your response to that can either be to bitch and moan and complain, get on at the referee, get on at each other's backs. You could shout at your player who put a tackle in. You know, it won't get you anywhere. But if you respond in a different manner, where you get everyone together as a group, you galvanize each other, maybe you make a few formation changes, maybe you know, if you need to go and get a goal, maybe you shuffle the pack, so to speak, put on another forward and try and dictate the game and respond very differently to going into your shell, then you're going to have a very different outcome. And it's what's going to give you, what decisions can you make and what response can you have to give you the best opportunity to win. And, you know, with the Yorkshire era, the event plus response equals outcome, I think once the event occurs, such as the red card or going a goal down, or, you know, American football, maybe there's been an interception, you know, obviously if there's another national lockdown, that kind of thing, maybe you lose a job, maybe you lose a partner or a parent. What you need to ask yourself is, what's the outcome that I want next? Once the event happens, what outcome do I want? And I think this goes back to the show that we did a couple of days ago when we were talking about setting your goals for 2021 for the year. You have to know your outcome. You have to know your higher purpose. And, you know, maybe your situation is either damage limitation or simply get the next touchdown, get the next goal, go and get a job interview. Like, that's going to dictate and give you a clue as to the behavior that you need to respond with. So a lot of us don't know the appropriate response, or we choose an inappropriate response because we don't have a conscious thought about our outcome. And I think, I'm sure I said this on episode 11, where one of the problems with New Year's resolutions is that we kind of have all these good intentions and we say things on a whim. Like, I want to lose weight. I want to do this. I want to do this race. I want to earn this amount of money. And it's purely an emotional kind of splurging of desires without any actual conscious thought. And if you put the conscious thought into it, the conscious thought into the outcome, you can then select appropriate behaviors. And you have to do that. You can't skip that step, because a response is very different to a reaction. Reaction is just knee-jerk. That's the emotional kind of kick. And it very often doesn't do much good. Like, think about if you were ever having an argument with someone, they've said something that set you on fire, and you've gone bang straight back at them with something else. How's that gone? Like, that's just you just headbutting each other. And when you've got two forces doing that and headbutting each other constantly, you won't get any benefit. You won't get any positive result. So you actually have to, you know, maybe take a moment, pause, think about it. And that's the important part. Think about it, remove the emotion, and go from there and make decisions on how you are going to behave. So when this lockdown kicked in, and I don't know whether you've either gone the same way as me on this, but, you know, I kind of continued based off my goals and, you know, my ideal self and my main desires. Two of the key things that I decided to focus myself on was, I want to be smarter and I want to be healthier. They're kind of like the two feelings that I want to maintain. I want to maintain a feeling of health I want to grow that, and I want to maintain a feeling of intelligence, and I want to push that to another level. So those are the overarching feelings that I want to maintain and have. What are the responses appropriate for getting smarter? We can make a list. You can make a list of these things. You can write them all down. You can do them in any format that you want. You can spidergram them or whatever, but pay attention to them. You know, maybe it's reading a book, reading 10 pages every night. Maybe it's studying something, taking on a new course. I know a lot of our personal trainer friends have gone and done that kind of thing throughout the whole pandemic. Maybe it's speaking to certain people, learning what you can from people around you, go and finding people more intelligent than you and speaking to them, asking them questions. Fortunately, us doing that, that's been a great opportunity for me to sit down and speak to people far smarter than I am. You know, being healthier. I mean, what actions do you need to be healthier? Go for a run, go for a walk, get fresh air, eat better foods. You know, if you don't know what they are, then you can find those out. That's for certain. You can go and research those, and you can learn these things. It's, you know, your ability to behave in a certain way is not fixed. It is changeable.
I think it's worthwhile stating that, like, the whole process of what we're talking about is very, very logical. And in order to do it effectively, really, you want to move beyond your emotions. And it's not that I think we need to tell people, it's not that you shouldn't feel the emotion. You absolutely will feel the emotion. You don't get to choose that. The emotion will come, but your responses come outside of the emotion, or regardless of the emotion. It's kind of like the whole people who show bravery and courage aren't people that don't feel fear. They're the people that feel the fear but carry on anyway.
Like if you're not fearful, you can't be courageous. By default, it doesn't work. It doesn't exist.
I think actually the word I would use is quite stupid. If it's glorified nowadays that you like people, I'm not afraid, I don't feel fear. Well, you're a cretin, because you should be afraid of certain things. It's a biological response to feel fear for certain things. And that's the sort of thing that will get your head bitten off by a lion.
I do remember there are examples of this as a genuine psychological condition where the area of our brain that kind of dictates that response to fear or sensing fear, there are certain individuals where that simply doesn't fire up, it doesn't light up, or it doesn't exist within them, or their ability to process significant things like that are non-existent. Whether it's, you know, you put a gun to someone's head and they just the response that they would have is just kind of blank, nothing, no emotion, no, like you would think if someone's got a gun to your head, you'd be fearful, you'd be scared, you might kind of be like, whoa, and start reasoning, bargaining, and doing something.
Probably consider your next words very carefully.
Yes, indeed. And I'll try and dig that out for another podcast at some point, because I can't remember where I read it or where I heard it. But very, very interesting. Very interesting.
Well, I actually think where I would tie that in is it reminds me of so I worked with, and still do work with, a guy who was diagnosed with depression like years and years and years and years ago. And he was talking to me going into the second lockdown. So this is when we were back in the gym temporarily, and he was saying about how he was planning on moving away from his family to live on his own for a while, so he could just spend some time on his own. But the way that he framed it to me was, yeah, I feel like I'm gonna come like on a downward spiral soon, so I think I just want to like get away and be by myself like for a while. I was like, all right, where are you gonna go? And he was telling me where he was gonna go. And in that moment, I'll tell you what I said. This is how I remember the story. I said to him, you know what you should do? You should write a book on how to get depression. Because if I thought I was going to go on a downward spiral of depression, now bearing in mind, I'm not trying to take the piss or anything here. I've not been diagnosed with depression, but I absolutely would not consider going and spending time on my own, all alone, where I'm just going to dwell in all those negative thoughts. That is like, he could sense the event was coming. His response was going to be, well, I'll get away from everyone. I'm just going to go and be on my own for a while. Almost like, yeah, I'm expecting it. Let's just go and be sad. Let's just go and have like the outcome in this scenario that is depression, and just go and experience it and then move away from, which is okay, but like there's not even giving yourself a fighting chance there at all. Like at least set yourself up so that you have a chance to move away from that and get a different outcome. I remember working with a lady who works for the NHS, and her father passed away, and she was like, I just feel sad every day, which is very, very normal. And she was like, everyone keeps telling me that eventually it'll go. And it's like, why would it suddenly go? Have you thought about that? She was like, well, no. Well, what do you think? Time's just going to wash it away? You suddenly won't think about it. It's like you have to do things and invite new things into your life and go out and do things that you want to be doing, things that you enjoy. You can't just expect the emotion to just dissipate and for you to all of a sudden not feel sadness or loneliness or depression or whatever it is that you might be feeling. The reason I'm saying this is because it might relate to wherever you're at mentally right now, given the current circumstances. Don't just invite it in and just let it stay there. Give yourself a fighting chance. Like, if you think there's a chance for you to be happy or to change your outcome, which might be sadness, loneliness, depression, whatever it is right now, what would the specific actions that you could take look like that would give you the best fighting chance for you to still enjoy spending time with the family, whether it's over Zoom or spending time with the kids and still being able to work? And what would it look like? Give yourself a fighting chance. Don't just accept and fall apart. Because I think it's like the thing where, like, ultimately you're looking to reclaim your own personal power. Like you are either reacting, which is like what you said earlier, you're just reacting and letting things happen, or you're taking the initiative, taking control of what is going on in your world and who you are choosing to be, and going out and giving yourself the best opportunity to be that.
Absolutely. Like if you take two contrasting scenarios and visualize either one, so you don't even have to be going through a particular situation right now, but let's say you were to visualize a moment in your life that was incredibly tough, incredibly sad. Maybe you lost someone, maybe you lost a job, maybe your business went under, maybe you got injured. You know, think about that moment, be in that moment. And I'm fairly confident you can find a way to conjure up all those emotions all over again. And by the basic rule of, you know, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. If you can think about something and be incredibly sad about it, you have to acknowledge the possibility that you can think about something incredibly positive in a moment that you're incredibly proud of and conjure up the alternative emotion. So again, where would you like to focus your attention? And, you know, I'm not saying, you know, let's say if you are going through an incredibly difficult period right now, I know quite a few people who are going through very, very tough times, you know, possibly depressed. Some people are depressed, and, you know, there are plenty of people out there who are maybe having second thoughts about, you know, staying in the world, staying with us. But you have to see a way out. And I'm not saying ignore your current circumstances and pretend that everything's okay and just visualize a compelling future. What you have to do is take your current situation, acknowledge it for what it is, and see a way to improve it. Come up with strategies, things that you need to do. Again, I've spoken about this before, and while we're on the subject of heroes, you know, if you visualize yourself as a superhero, right? Visualize yourself as a superhero. What powers do you want? What qualities, what skills? Or let's say you're a character in a game. You know, what are your abilities? And what are your ratings in those abilities? You could do this as just a fun little game for yourself. In fact, actually, I think we should do another podcast where it's me and you, and we'll rate each other on certain superpowers and qualities, and come up with all your talents, all your abilities, and give yourself a rating and think, right, okay, which ones do I want to level up? Because I'm fairly confident, I'm very confident, in fact, that, you know, if you start taking actions to level yourself up and see improvements in even just a very, very tiny area or one particular skill, if that starts going up by 1 or 2 points, and you feel your ratings improve, if you like, we both know very well that when people are training in the gym and we see them getting stronger, we see them getting faster, more explosive, more powerful, more durable, improving their physical health, their mental well-being, we can see that progress happening, and we know that people are happy with that. People are happiest when they're making progress. So if you can do that, just 1 or 2 minor areas, you'll feel better about yourself immediately. And then other areas of your life will automatically improve as a result of you taking care of those basic things and, you know, continuing to learn, continuing to grow, and continuing to develop. One of the questions I do want to ask you as well, you mentioned this a little while ago about sort of like social media and cleansing your social media. And, you know, the way that social media seems to work is you kind of get an avatar created and it will show you things based on what it thinks you want to see. Is there a downside? Is it a bad thing to cleanse your social media, remove certain people, make sure you know, maybe you're only getting information or seeing things from one very specific area? Does that not close you off to possibilities and limit your potential for growth, or is it a good thing?
Well, it's both. Like, yes, it will close off certain possibilities and certain opportunities, yes, but what it also does is it means you are specifically choosing the things that you have access to and the opportunities that you have access to. So if you were thinking about what opportunities do you want to present themselves to you, then just leave those windows, leave those doors open. Like, if you're following certain things that you just like the look of every now and then, but don't have any meaning to you or anything like that, get rid of them. Like, the ones that serve no purpose to you whatsoever. The answer to your question is it does both. It will close certain windows if you're getting rid of them, because that's exactly what you're doing. But is that not part of the process? Is that not what you're doing it for? Because you're filtering out the things that you don't want to control you and your life and have an impact on you. I think my personal opinion is it's a good thing. It's a proactive step that you are taking, and therefore it's positive. It's always positive, because you are now controlling what is going on in your environment, rather than just waiting for things to happen and letting things happen, which more often than not, unfortunately, things don't just happen just because we kind of think that we might want them to. Like, or at least not great things anyway. If that were the case, we definitely would be in a third lockdown right now.
See, I think, sorry, I was sorry to interrupt you there, bro, but just while it's in my head, before I forget, I think when you're selecting certain things on social media, or you're liking certain things, listening to certain things, or watching certain things, the question I would have in my mind is, does this fit with who I want to be? Because like you said earlier, with, you know, when you were listening to the podcast of the rapper, whoever it was, or someone like they were talking about drugs and things like that. You know, that doesn't fit with, if that doesn't fit with who you want to be, simply listening to it is going to put you into a negative state because it doesn't fit with your persona. It doesn't feel right. And, you know, it's not who you want to embody. It's not who you want to become. So I think quite often on social media, it's everything's very emotional response. It's very knee-jerk reaction. You know, maybe you go and like a video of a cat doing something, or, you know, you go and like things for humorous reasons. Maybe Lad Bible was one of those things. I know I used to have that on social media, but for me, just seeing stupid stuff all the time coming up from that, I don't want that. I want to fill my kind of feeds with motivation, inspiration, positive people that are taking action, doing stuff, being successful. And anyone that bitches, whinges, and moans, they're gone. I'm not interested in the slightest, because it doesn't fuel you. It doesn't fire you up. Use things to stir positive feelings and emotions and control your state. And then the final thing that I would add is don't spend loads of time on social media. Don't get your news from it. Just follow people that inspire you to take action on being the best that you can be. That's my take on that.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it's worthwhile thinking about what each media platform is designed to do. Like you said, obviously a lot of them are designed to feed you the information that you think, that it thinks that you want to see before you even want to see it. That means it's controlling you before you've even thought about wanting to do that thing. Like, do you remember when, was it Coca-Cola that got in trouble for subliminal messages? What were they doing? They were putting flashing like a Coca-Cola thing on a cinema screen or something. I read about it somewhere. I believe it's true, but I can't remember the ins and outs of it. But essentially what they were doing was literally your conscious brain didn't even pick it up because it was flashing so fast, but your subconscious brain did. And guess what? People were buying more Coca-Cola and they got in trouble for it. Like, things will go in there without you knowing about it. They really will. They really will. And I think one of the things that we kind of like, I wrote down the notes earlier because I want to give people a bit of hope as to moving forward, because we talked quite a bit about like depression and things like that. What we're essentially talking about is like with the hero stuff is Hebb's law. Like, what gets fired together gets wired together. Have you ever listened to Dr. Joe Dispenza? He explains it's kind of like essentially a form of time travel where you shunt yourself into the past and then create your future using your past. So let me just break that down quickly because I don't want to keep people too much longer. What he's talking about is, do you remember back in, when was the last World Cup? What year was the last World Cup? Was it 2018?
Yeah.
When we had a glorious summer and England, well, we didn't necessarily perform too well. We weren't playing too well, but we got further than we thought we ever would.
We did all right. It was respectable. I mean, it was a semi-final.
Right. Well, so some of the things I'm talking about here is, I'm saying this because it's a personal example. For a lot of me and for a lot of my friends, like I know, and I'm talking about friends and clients as well, we actually went to the local pub and watched it instead of doing a class one evening. We were watching the game against, was it Colombia? And it was glorious weather, so we were sat outside and watching it and cheering England on, blah blah blah. But essentially, what I'm talking about here is the feelings that you felt become associated with the experiences that you had. And like, if there was a specific song that was playing, if there was a certain thing that was happening, whatever, your brain and your body are smart enough to wire all that together. And the next time you might, so I think a really simplified way of explaining this is if you've ever had something really good happen to you, and like there was a certain song that you kept listening to, like at that moment in time or what have you. The next time you listen to that song, you will immediately think of those memories again. You will go back there and you will start to feel good again because you're basically remembering how you felt. It felt really good. That's what Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about. He's talking about your basic physiological response, shunting you back into the past, because that's where you were at that point in the past. And he said, that position there and the way that you now feel in the present, you're then going to control your future. That's a terrible way of explaining it. Sure, Dr. Joe Dispenza would be very unimpressed with me. However,
I think you're doing yourself a discredit there. I think that's actually a very good summary, a very good way to put it.
Well, I appreciate that. But my point there is to give you all hope. What we're talking about is that E plus R equals always the same thing. What gets fired together gets wired together. What I'm explaining is you can create essentially your set responses to events in order to create the specific set of outcomes that you want. For example, and this is where this whole thought pattern and me waffling on has come from. If you cleanse your social media for all the specific things that you want to make you think about, let's say being successful and being a big professional outfit and making lots of money, blah, 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 then each time you go to it, you'll get the exact same things and you're more likely to get the outcome that you want from going on social media. Does that make sense? Have I explained that okay?
Absolutely.
Likewise, if you're going on social media looking for people who are complaining about stuff and people who are showing off all this fancy shit that you don't care about or what have you, that's exactly what you're going to find, and it's going to piss you off every time. It's going to make you feel shit every time. That is your outcome.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to summarize it. So in your final...
Yes.
Sorry, what did you say then?
I was saying you can time travel into the future by controlling your physiology, your responses.
So I was going to ask you, what's your best way to summarize the event plus response equals outcome for people in the current situation with this third lockdown? And
you can't control the event. The event is being controlled by government and people of influence and blah, blah, blah. But you can control your responses. You can control where your energy goes. You can't necessarily control the specific emotions that you feel, but you can control how you respond to those emotions and whether or not you let them control and dictate what you do moving forward. And thus you can control your outcome even in the next 10 minutes and your outcome coming out of the lockdown as well. Like, I'm not saying that, I know a lot of people are saying like, we're not expecting everyone to have their shit together coming out of a lockdown. That's not what we're saying. Like, it's not that you all of a sudden going to make massive instant progress, but you can certainly control what you're doing and how you feel about things.
I love that.
That's what you should focus on. That is exactly what you should focus on. It's natural that you're going to be pissed off and annoyed and you won't have access to as many resources or opportunities, but there are still things you can do. The way the world's going, it's branching out online. Is there stuff you can do online? Can you still talk to someone? You're still allowed to meet. What I can't remember what the rule is. Like, I think I was reading for PC, you can meet like 2 people. I think if your ratio was 1 to 2, so 1 trainer and 2 people, you would train them outdoors. I think it was. I'm not doing it, so it doesn't matter anyway. I don't really know it, but like if that's the case for PCs, then I'm sure it means you can go and meet one other person outdoors. If you're feeling lonely, find someone you trust and you care about, arrange a time to go out and meet them and talk to them. Like, and I think people will take for advantage, like, even if it means you only get 10 minutes with someone, it's not worth it. Well, I beg to differ. It is worth it.
Yeah, 100%. And remember, one final thing is, it is always too soon to quit. Always too soon to quit. Don't do that. Don't give up. Practice persistence. Keep moving. I think, do you know what? I think I spoke a lot more than I wanted to there. I think I've said a lot more than I intended in the first place. But hopefully that's been a very positive, forward-thinking show there for you. What do you reckon? Do you think that was forward-thinking enough, Chris? Do you think that's been enlightening enough?
I think there were some pearls of wisdom in there. I think there were a few nuggets. I think people will take out of it what they were looking for. So I think if one person listens to it and they found one good thing in there, we've done a good job.
Yeah, that's our job. That's our job. We want to just spark anything positive as a result of this is good. And from what I can understand from what Chris has said there, if you don't like it, if you didn't like that podcast, you didn't like that show, that's on you. That's your fault, your responsibility. That's not us. No, it's all about how we deliver it and if we can summarize it in the right way. So if this show has maybe sparked one or two thoughts, one or two questions, feel free to get in touch with us, Alex or Chris, at lenkohq.com. Feel free, please leave us a review. Leave us a very good review, 5-star review. I'll do us. You can do that. That'd be great.
Don't leave us a review if it's less than 5-star, please. Not yet, anyway.
Yeah. And one other thing as well, please feel free, please share this podcast, this show with anyone and everyone, anyone who you think might benefit, might learn something, might engage with it in a positive way and gain something from it. If you can do that and help them out and help us out, that would be absolutely amazing. Anyway, until next time, it's been an absolute pleasure and we cannot wait to get you another one soon. If you've got any other topics you would like us to discuss, anything you'd like to hear us ramble on about, send it through to us and we will get something together ASAP. Anyway, for now, stay safe, look after yourselves. Chris, you can say it.
Lenko out.